Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are tuning in. Welcome to Mommy Mondays, where we come on and we give mommy tips for all ages. And today's topic is communication. So, I hope you guys have tuned into our past videos. The one we had last week was about bedtime and the importance of that so that mommies can have some mommy time. And the one before that, which was our very first video, was about taking your child out in public, how to make that a great experience. So please go back on my page if you're watching on Instagram or on Facebook and look back to see if you can find those other ones. In addition, today we are launching the YouTube channel, Indulge with Indira, where I have a YouTube channel that has all my mommy videos on there. It will continue to have my mommy videos on there, in addition to other just different things that I do in my life that help me to be a better mom. So I want to pass that on to my fellow mothers because it's not easy, and some of us are single and some of us are married and single. We just need help regardless of our status, right, ladies? So today, the topic is communication. And I'm going to break this down. I'm hoping the video doesn't get too long because it's 3 different stages on which we are that communication builds on that we're going to talk about, right? They're just general stages, nothing scientific, but definitely a way for me to break down the conversation for today. So if you have time, listen now. If not, play some, stop it, come back later. Either way, it's going to bless you, okay? That's my prayer, is that it's going to bless you, that you were drawn here for a reason, okay? Also, if you know someone who could benefit from this conversation while we're listening to it, before or after, go ahead and share it with them. And when you go to that YouTube channel, like and subscribe. Indulge with Indira, okay? So communication. One thing we know about communication is, and if we don't know, you're going to find out, communication is both verbal and nonverbal, right? Communication is what we say, and communication is also how we respond, how our body moves when we talk. We're communicating certain things. So with our children, we have to make sure that we are communicating with them effectively so that it lessens the stress, and most importantly, so that we build a foundation of self-respect, or respect for others, and compassion based on what is being communicated to us in our environment. Okay? So, drum roll clap. The first stage is the infant stage. That starts with the children crying, right? That's definitely a nonverbal stage. And it's a nonverbal stage because the child cannot talk. So our child will speak to us in gestures. When they're hungry, and a lot of times the gestures, I have some notes, guys. So a lot of times the gestures can mean either they're hungry, if they're reaching out, they want a particular object or person. Definitely, we know, again, crying is definitely a way that they communicate hunger, that they need to be changed or diapers soiled, or that they want to be held, right? Crying, some type of discomfort. Crying lets us know. It doesn't always mean pain. Crying is not always communicating pain. The other thing that how our infant will communicate to us is through their body movements. Through their body movements, we'll know if they're excited, we'll know if they're gassy, we'll know if they are in discomfort, right? That if they're using the bathroom, you know, we know what these things mean, and we are learning these nonverbal cues as our children are infants. In addition, we have facial expressions and even body temperature. So of course the facial expressions they crack us up the most, right? But they let us know exactly how our child is feeling when they cannot talk. And then the body temperature tells us if your child is crying, if we have another cue coming in, nonverbal cue coming in, if they're crying because they're sweaty, or if they're crying because they have a fever. A lot of times crying is the number one nonverbal cue that an infant will use to indicate that there's something going on. They are trying to communicate to us that something is going on, or that there's a want or a need, right? Because it's primitive. When we're infants, it's either a want or a need that we want. And those nonverbal cues are how our children are communicating with us. So at a very young age, we are studying our children. We are learning what happens when they eat different types of foods. We're learning what happens when they don't sleep. We're learning what happens when they need to use the bathroom or when they have used the bathroom. They are communicating to us. So as they move on and they get older, the communication patterns will change. But at the same time, if you're studying your child from the time they're an infant, you're going to be able to go with the ebb and flow of how they learn to express themselves. But keeping in mind that you are their example. How you choose to respond in a particular situation is how you're teaching your child to communicate in that same situation as they develop in life. So if every time your child drops something and spills something, you're communicating to them that don't make a mistake, don't drop, when you eat, make sure everything goes to your mouth, and understand that this causes anxiety, especially when we're communicating to our children out of emotion. That's, moms, is the hard part. How do we communicate to them without the emotion? Because sometimes the behaviors are so intense that it evokes an emotion from us, and we are communicating through anxiety, through fear, through anger. And that is what we're teaching our children. So as they get older, we're like, where did she get that from? She got that from you. Remember that time when, yeah, she got that from you based on how you responded to a situation that was either the exact same or similar. So study your child from the beginning. Study your child and understand that those same ways of communicating as an infant is how they're going to communicate as a toddler. So let's talk about toddlers, okay? That was a transition. Sorry. So the toddlers. So let me get to my toddler sheets. The biggest thing we need to think about with toddlers is that they need the language because the brain is developing. Now, language is broken up into communication is nonverbal and verbal, but language is receptive and expressive. Receptive, what they understand, expressive, what they're saying. And oftentimes and not, you will find that children have a higher receptive language than they do expressive language. Reception is, we understand a lot more than we can say is pretty much what I'm saying, especially children because they spend majority of their life up until the time they're 2 not talking. So they're always taking in information. So they're expressing themselves through nonverbal. So now that the brain has taken in all this life information and they've been in this world for 24 and 48 months, it's now time for us to give them the words to go with the body language. It's no longer nonverbal because language acquisition has continued to happen. So they need the words. The words aren't just going to appear. We have to feed them the words, and we feed them words through everyday talking, through reading books, through television, iPads. They're hearing language all the time, music. So what you're doing now, when you see your child especially have a behavior, if they're communicating to you that they're hungry, give them the words. Johnny, are you hungry? Is that why you're kicking your feet? Is that why you're upset right now? Are you hungry? Johnny, are you upset with me? Because it's okay for your child to be upset with you. It's just how they respond when they're upset is what we are trying to help them we're trying to communicate to them what's appropriate and what's not. But you have to give your children the words so that the behaviors, the negative behaviors are reduced. If they give you a hug, oh, I love you too. Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay. I forgive you for whatever the situation is. When they give you that nonverbal cue as a toddler, you need to be giving them the words because that's also how you're developing language. By the time a child's 18 months, they should be at least trying to string 2 words together. Mommy hug, mommy cup, mommy hungry, I hungry. These are things that they should be able to give the word so that you're not having a child kick and scream when they're hungry or when they're tired. Okay? And we talked about bedtime in our last one. So you should be already monitoring. Okay, I shouldn't say you should. Okay. We are monitoring our children, and so we know when they are getting tired. And so when we know when they're getting tired, we help them to get their bodies down so that it reduces negative behaviors. That's what I meant to say. Okay. So we're always communicating based on how we respond, our own nonverbal cues, and what we say. So when you're giving them the words, give them the words with the appropriate tone. Not, are you hungry? Is that why are you hungry? Why are you over here screaming? Because you hungry? That is how we feel. That would be us responding with emotion. So when your child is exhibiting that behavior and they're trying to communicate something to you, and it's a behavior that warrants, a firm response, take a beat and remind yourself, my child has been in this world for 48 months. My child has been in this world for 24 months. My child has been in this world for 9 months. Understand that they seem like, oh, she's smart. She knows what she's doing. She only knows what she's doing up until the age that they are, right? And we've been in this world for how many months and we're still figuring things out. We still need help figuring, and we need people to communicate with us to figure things out. So yeah. So the next stage, as they go through toddlers and you're giving them the words, you're also giving them tone. You're communicating to them what is important, what's not important, the severity of things based on the inflections of your voice. The key thing that you have to communicate to your toddler is that you're the biggest. I stole that from a sister friend. You're the biggest. You are the biggest. Understand always, they can communicate all they want, but they have to have a level of respect. There has to be a hierarchy in your family, because if not, then you'll have to resort to violence to control your child. And you're not trying to control your child. You're trying to teach your child how to have self-control and teach your child how to self-regulate. Because if you're always there to control them, what are they going to do when you're not there? And who is going to control them if you're not there? Because they're going to have to regulate themselves. They're going to have to become regulated at some point to be a productive citizen, right? So that's our charge, moms. Build productive citizens with love, who have love and compassion for themselves and their community. Like it's on us. We got that charge that we get to carry. And then at the end of the day, pat ourselves on the back when they execute, right? Okay, so I told you it's going to be a long video. I told you. So the other thing, let's see. Yes. The other thing that our children will communicate with us at toddlers too, and even a little before, are allergies. Watch how your child communicates, even if their speech increases or their behaviors after they eat certain foods, because your child could be alerting to you that they have an allergy, a food allergy. So always be observing your children, even in the second stage, when they're in the toddler ages of 2 and 4. Observe them. They are always giving you nonverbal cues. They will always give you nonverbal cues. And as they do, and you recognize what they're trying to say, give them the words to say it, because it increases their language and it reduces behaviors, and it empowers them to be able to navigate through their own environments independently. Okay? That was a mouthful. The last thing is, the last stage I would say is 5-year-old and up. Now I know you're saying, huh? 5-year-old and up, like there's a whole lot of ages in between. There is. However, we're talking about communication. So the fundamental things that we're putting in place when a child is 5, slow down, are the same fundamental, they're fundamentals. So we're gonna use them up until adulthood, right? So from a time a child is at least 5 years old, some children it could be sooner, depending on the intellect of your child. You should be it is good to speak to your child as a little adult, as an adult going through childhood, adult going through adolescence, an adult going through teenage years, an adult going through early adult years. We have to think that way. We have to think that way so that we understand when they ask the questions why, that they need to know why. Because as an adult, if our boss is telling us that we have to change something at work, or if we make a decision, it's because we have a reason behind it. And why is just given a reason. They're asking the reason, not to be smart, not to get on your nerves, even though sometimes they're being smart and sometimes they get on your nerves, but really to understand how this behavior, how this request, how this outing, how any of this that you're having me to do, how does it equate to me? How does it affect me in my environment? Why? What's the reason behind the actions that you're taking, mom? Why are you responding that way? Is it because something I did? Is it because something someone else did? You have to communicate more effectively and give them more words by the time they're 5 so that they understand. If they're going to school, for example, when you go to school, you have to sit down in that desk and you have to listen to that teacher the same way you listen to me. And the reason is, if there's an emergency, if something happens, if you fall down and hurt yourself, or even if you want a hug in some places, your teacher is going to be the one that does that for you. So you have to, she's the biggest in the classroom. So you have to make sure that you're respectful, blah, 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 blah. You're giving them the reasons for the conditions and the rules and what you're putting into their life and how their life is changing. Because as you change and you evolve, so does your way of communicating with your children. So it's important, moms, that we are in touch with ourselves and our own emotions and our own nonverbal cues and our own ways of communicating so that we understand how we are communicating with our children. And based on who they are, because we've studied them up until now, we've known them for at least 5 years, we've studied them enough to know that if I yell, that's not going to create the reaction that I want. If I'm going to make them anxious, so I'm going to use my tone. Or this child needs me to yell because for some reason, that's the only, whatever, you know your children. But the only way to get to know them is through trial and error, because they don't come with a book. So that you don't, how do I say this? So that you don't, I won't say ruin, but you, you know how there are things that are in our life that maybe we felt like our parents could have done right. We repeat, that's the word. We don't repeat the same things in our child's life that didn't work in our life. And some things we need to repeat, right? Some disciplines that we learned, we need to pass those on. But there are other things that our parents didn't necessarily do that we wanted them to do, needed them to do, or vice versa, right? Some things were done that we could have done without. So talk to your children like they're little people, okay? And understand that proper communication with your child is going to reduce the stress level. And once it reduces that stress level, as I said earlier, it creates a level of respect for both mom and child. So your child knows that I can talk to my mom, whether I have to write her a letter because she responds better when I write things, or whether she has to write me a letter because she knows that if she tells me something in the midst of the heat of the moment, I should say, that I'm not going to hear her. So it builds a level of respect, and it's a bond that a mother and a child has, that you can just look at your kid and know what's going on and not have to always say it or know when to say it, right? Because timing is also everything with children and adults. So let's see. In addition, values about self-expression, self-respect, and I'm just trying to make sure I have everything. Yeah, we're teaching our kids that, and like I said earlier, improper communication leads to anxiety. So for this week, as you're trying out the other tips that I mentioned in the past couple of weeks, try out this one. Try communicating. Even if this week you're just observing and you're just seeing like how they are, you know, instead of always talking to them and telling them what to do and them being the subordinate. What happens if you like have a conversation, because they're an adult going through childhood? So have a conversation. They're wise. They will communicate to you. And a lot of times they communicate lessons to us, right? But I can go on and on. And like I said, it's going to be a long video, but I don't want to take up too much of your time for this particular tip, because I want you to have time to digest it, right? So if anything you take away from this video is to study your child. Study your child and understand that their communication starts off non-verbally. So they are telling you different things with their body, with their face. And in order for you to be an effective communicator with them and for them to become an effective communicator, you have to give them the words to reduce the behaviors. And so that happens at the age of 5. You'll see that they'll start to give you information that you didn't even see. And then it will build the relationship that you have, and it helps you to be a better mother. Okay? So get in touch with yourself, mom, and understand what your nonverbal cues are and what you are actually communicating to your child in each situation. And I hope this helps. Please hit like, share, subscribe, whatever platform you're on, you know what to do. And I will see you next week for another mommy tip. Again, if you have any comments, please place them. And if you know of anyone, share. And if you have any ideas that we could use on the next one, let me know. In the meantime, I'll be thinking about you, and understand, believe, and know that you are so blessed to be a mommy. Talk to you later.